Why was it that the room always grew quieter when she walked in? Captain Reena Torres felt it again that night as the briefing began. The sideways glances, the quick silence that fell as if her very presence demanded something more than words. Her helmet was tucked beneath one arm, her boots still coated in dust from the airfield. Her eyes sharp enough to cut through the dim glow of the satellite map projected on the wall. She wasn't there to make friends, and everyone knew it. The Apache attack helicopter waited outside on the tarmac like a beast crouched at rest. Blades humming with restrained violence, weapons locked and armed to the men in the room. It was just a machine. To her, it was something else entirely, an extension of her body, her instinct, her defiance. She took her seat, but didn't lean back. She never did. Commander Reer's voice was rough. Scarred from years of deployments, we've got a window. 15 minutes max on the ground. 1C IA asset. Compromised cover. Extraction in the Alakasra Valley. His hand tapped the glowing map. Jagged ridges stretched across the screen. The valley drawn like a scar in the earth. A small red dot blinked at the extraction point. We're in. We're out. That's simple. But nothing in Afghanistan was ever simple. Reena's co-pilot, Malik, stood just behind her, arms folded loosely as though none of this could shake him. He was calm, quiet, almost unshakable, unnecessary. Counterweight to her fire, his eyes flicked once to her, a silent check. You good? She gave the smallest nod. The SEALs gathered around the table were seasoned, hard, carved by combat. They wore fatigue in their faces like a second skin. Most nodded through the briefing, but one, Sergeant Briggs, stood rigid, arms crossed, his jaw set like stone. He hadn't said a word, and he hadn't smiled when someone cracked the usual joke about Torres's reputation. She met his eyes across the room. He didn't flinch. Not used to flying with women? She asked flatly. The words hung heavy, not hostile, just sharp enough to cut the air. Riggs didn't blink. Not used to pilots who don't follow rules. The room stiffened, a low chuckle dying in someone's throat. That's funny, she said, her tone even. Neither are the Taliban. It could have escalated. It always could. But Commander Roar slammed the tension shut. Enough. The clock's running. He jabbed at the map again. Intel says light patrols, but intel. Out here's a coin toss. Her chest tightened. A coin toss. She hated when they said that, because what it really meant was no one knew anything. Not really. And in that uncertainty, lives were spent like loose change. Air support is thin, Roar finished. Torres, you're it. She didn't nod immediately. She just let the words sit there. To her, that wasn't a detail. It was the entire weight of the night. One helicopter, one crew, one sky. If they failed, the SEALs below wouldn't get another chance. Finally, she said it with quiet certainty. Then they're covered. Outside, the night was cold. The rotors thumped like a war drum across the darkened tarmac. Gravel crunched beneath boots as the SEALs marched toward their Black Hawk, each man shouldering not only his weapon but the invisible burden of what might go wrong. Reena climbed into her Apache, Malik sliding into the co-pilot's seat. The cockpit came alive around them, green lights flickering, instrument panels humming, targeting systems booting into lethal focus. She pulled her night vision goggles into place, and suddenly the world turned ghostly, every contour alive with heat and shadow. Her gloved hands wrapped around the cyclic and throttle. To anyone else, it might have felt like cold metal. To her, it was more like piano keys. She could make this machine sing. The Apache lifted, blades carving the silence. The Black Hawk carrying the SEALs banked ahead. Dipping into the first of many shadowed valleys, Reena followed. The desert night stretched wide beneath them, the horizon a jagged line of teeth and stone. 2 clicks from LZ, Malik murmured. Eyes sweeping the instruments, Reena scanned. The ground, the riverbed below was bone dry, hemmed in by cliffs, too tight for comfort, too perfect for an ambush. Her stomach coiled. The air felt wrong. Not in the way it always felt wrong out here, but heavier, like the earth itself was. "Waiting, this doesn't smell right," Malik muttered. "It's Afghanistan." She replied quietly. Nothing smelled right. Static crackled through the headset as the SEALs prepared to land. "Bravo team touching down now. No contact." Reena's eyes didn't leave the ridgeline. Shadows shifted. Something moved. She caught the faint glow of heat signatures blooming high on the slope. She counted them under her breath. 3. No. 4. Watching. She called it in. Silence answered. Just static. Her jaw tightened. They were alone. Below. The Black Hawk kicked up a cyclone of dust as the SEALs disembarked. Boots striking the ground in fast precision. Sergeant Briggs bent low, moving toward a figure slumped against a rock. The CIA asset. Injured. Bleeding. Barely conscious. Package secured. Briggs reported. And then it happened. A shot cracked the silence. A single round. The sound of inevitability. 1 second of stillness. Then the entire night detonated. Gunfire poured from the cliffs. Muzzle flashes lit the darkness like strobe lights. RPGs streaked from the high ground, exploding yards from the landing zone. Dirt and fire rained down as the SEALs scrambled for cover. "Ambush!" Roar's voice thundered through the comms. Multiple contacts. All directions. The Black Hawk yanked skyward, its pilot jerking into evasive maneuvers. It was too hot. Too exposed. They couldn't stay. In seconds, the SEALs were alone. Cut off, outgunned, boxed into the valley floor. From above, Reena saw everything. Her blood froze, requesting permission to engage. She said, voice clipped, sharp. The reply crawled back with delay. "Stand by for confirmation." Her jaw clenched so hard it hurt. Standing by is how they die. Without waiting, she nosed the Apache downward. Malik's voice stayed calm, always calm. "We're going in." She flipped the weapon system live. The reticle locked red. Her thumb pressed down, and then the Apache screamed. Tracer fire stitched across the ridge, tearing into stone, sand, and flesh. The cannon thundered, ripping through the night like a beast unchained. Dust and bodies tumbled in the chaos. As she skimmed the cliff face so close the rotors seemed to scrape the rock. The valley erupted into panic. From below, Briggs dragged the wounded asset into the dry riverbed, bullets slicing the air inches. From him, Roar barked orders through the comms, his rifle already glowing red from return fire, but none of it mattered yet. Because in that moment, the sky belonged to her. Still, in the back of her mind, something twisted. The ambush was too clean, too prepared. These weren't just scattered fighters. They had planned this, positioned perfectly, weapons ready. Where the hell did they get this intel? Malik muttered. Reena didn't answer. Her hands were steady, her eyes locked on the next ridge. The next movement, the next breath of heat against the cold screen of her visor. Inside, though, she felt it. That quiet, aching truth she'd never say out loud. They were alone. And if she failed, if her hands trembled even once, then every man on the ground would die beneath her shadow. She gripped the sickly tighter. Not tonight. Not while she still owned the sky. How long could men hold their breath under fire? On the valley floor, the SEALs pressed against broken stone, the air thick with dust and gunpowder. Each second stretched into eternity. Bullets whipped past their ears, carving sparks into the rocks. The injured CIA asset moaned, half conscious, his blood painting the earth dark beneath him. Sergeant Briggs dragged him further behind cover, his jaw clenched, his rifle slung awkwardly as he moved. Above them, the Apache came alive. Reena Torres' voice was calm, but it carried a weight that pressed even Malik into silence. Targeting left ridge, cannon hot. She squeezed the trigger. The cannon roared, stone shattered. Men screamed. Dust plumed upward like volcanic ash. The night sky turned red with tracer rounds, streaking arcs of fury. Good hits, Malik called. Scanning thermal. 3 down. More moving north slope. Her visor shifted. New signatures bloomed across the landscape. The ambush was spreading. Dozens of heat flares moved with precision, not chaos. Whoever planned this wanted them crushed, not scattered, on the ground. Commander Ruhr's voice was ragged. "Bravo team, shift east. Cover the package." But the eastern slope was already alive with muzzle flashes. The SEALs were boxed, their escape routes shrinking with every passing second. "Command, this is Viper 9. Torres snapped into her comms. "Engaged multiple. Hostiles, heavy concentration on all ridges. We need immediate fire clearance. Repeat, immediate. Static." Then a voice. "Negative. Abort engagement. Clear the zone for fast movers. Airstrike inbound in 20 minutes. 20 minutes, her stomach dropped. "They don't have 20 minutes. That's a direct order," Command repeated. She reached for the comm switch and clicked it to mute. Malik looked at her, one brow raised. His voice was even, steady. "You just went dark." "They'll thank me later," she said. "If anyone's left alive to thank." Below, Briggs's rifle cracked, rounds slamming into shadows darting. Between rocks, the CIA asset groaned as shrapnel tore into his thigh. Briggs shouted for a medic, but there was none. They were all medics now, all fighters, all survivors clawing for breath. The Apache swept in low, its shadow stretching across the riverbed like a phantom. Reena felt her heartbeat sync with the rhythm of the rotors, each thump a reminder of her responsibility. She wasn't just a pilot tonight. She was the thin line between life and annihilation. Contact. "RPG North Slope." Malik shouted. She banked hard left. The rocket streaked past, exploding in a burst of fire too close to the tail. Warning lights flashed across the console. Tailboom integrity compromised. Malik said quickly, "We're still flying." Reena replied. Her grip didn't waver. She leveled the nose and spotted the RPG team reloading on the ridge. Without hesitation, she pressed the trigger. The cannon spat death, the hillside erupting in flame and stone. The insurgents disappeared in the chaos, their screams swallowed. By the roar, from below, one of the SEALs shouted into the comms. "That's not just cover fire. She's clearing us a damn road." But every shot came at a cost. Fuel at 50%, Malik warned. "One missile racked down. We'll make it work. You're flying like we're invincible." She didn't answer. Her eyes locked forward, scanning for the next wave. It came fast. Thermal lit up with reinforcements, a convoy winding down a switchback road. Headlights cut, but heat signatures glowing bright against the cold night. At least one technical with a mounted machine gun, maybe more. North slope. "Moving fast," Malik called. "No missiles left on that side. Cannon's all I need." She dipped the Apache low, so low the ground rushed up to meet them. She lined the nose, pressed the trigger. The cannon ripped through the truck, its tires exploding, the vehicle flipping sideways before erupting into a fireball that tumbled down the rocky slope. The SEALs below let out a cheer, not wild, not joyous, but the raw relief of men who had been seconds from death. But Reena didn't cheer. Her face was set, her pulse steady. She wasn't here for glory. She was here because there was no one else. "South flank," Malik said suddenly, voice tight. "Thermal shows dozens. Cave system, far edge of valley, they're pouring out like ants." Reena's jaw clenched. She tilted the Apache higher, climbing above the battlefield for a moment. As if to catch her breath, her eyes traced the canyon. The SEAL's fallback route was about to be cut off. "Not while I'm here," she whispered. She dove. The Apache plunged into the valley like a hawk descending on prey. The cannon roared, shredding rock and sandbags, tearing through fighters before they could even take positions. Shouts echoed in the night as insurgents scrambled, their ambush unraveling under the relentless storm from above, on the ground. Briggs shielded the CIA asset with his body as rocks and debris rained down. His face lifted. eyes catching the silhouette of the Apache screaming overhead. For a brief moment, his skepticism cracked. "She's not just covering us," he muttered. "She's owning the sky." Still, the cost bled through the machine. "Fuel at 30%, Malik warned. "Another hit, and we won't make it back to base." Reena's voice didn't shake. "Then we don't go back until they're out." Her defiance was quiet. Simple final. The Apache dipped again, circling tighter, dragging the battle line outward with each pass. The insurgents faltered, their precision unraveling into chaos, but the valley was still alive with gunfire, still heavy with the threat of death. The SEALs pushed east, moving fast, carrying their wounded, every step earned under fire. Dust caked their faces, sweat mixed with blood. Their weapons clutched like lifelines overhead. Reena guided them, not with words, but with fire and steel. Every burst from the cannon, every shadow her rotors cast, was a message. Not tonight, not while she was here and in the quiet between cannon bursts. She felt it again, that tug inside her chest, sharp and unrelenting. This wasn't just duty. This was personal, because somewhere deep down, she knew the truth. They hadn't stumbled into this ambush. Someone had led them here, and whoever it was, they hadn't counted on her. How much weight could one machine carry before it broke apart? The Apache screamed against the night, its tail shaking with every burst of cannon fire, alarms flashing red across the cockpit. Reena Torres didn't flinch. She flew low, precise, ruthless, cutting a path through the chaos below. The SEALs clung to every step, moving east toward the narrow trail that carved its way out of the valley. The enemy wasn't breaking. If anything, they were pressing harder, as though their numbers had no end. The cliff spat fire, muzzle flashes blinding against the dark. RPG trails slashed the sky like comets, some striking stone, some exploding against the ground just feet from the SEAL's position. Malik's voice cut through the roar of the cockpit. "Fuel's critical, Reena, 28%. Enough." She said simply, "Enough for what?" Enough to finish. Her words weren't bravado. They were quiet, steady, as though she had already measured the cost and accepted it. The Apache banked hard left, its rotors skimming the cliffside as she lined up the next run. The cannon lit up again, tracer rounds tearing across the slope, shredding sandbags and bodies alike. Enemy fire scattered, some men breaking, others charging harder on the ground. Sergeant Briggs hauled the CIA asset up by the shoulders, gritting his teeth as he dragged the bleeding man over rocks. Every step felt like dragging the earth itself. Dust choked his throat, sweat burned his eyes, but he didn't stop. Commander Rohr barked orders, his rifle barking back at the ridgeline. "Move east." Secondary LZ-1 click out. But the enemy knew. They were moving too, pouring from the cave system in waves, cutting across the ravine to flank the escape. Malik's thermal lit up with new signatures. They're trying to box the team. And again, south and west ridges are alive. Reena cursed under her breath. She climbed, pulling the Apache higher, scanning the battlefield below. The SEALs were a tight knot of motion, pushing forward, covering their wounded, but every path ahead was closing. "They're not just here to kill," she said quietly. "They're here to trap." Malik glanced at her. "Trap for who? The SEALs?" Her eyes didn't leave the scope. "For all of us." The radio crackled again. Command's voice sharp. "Air unit, disengage immediately. Clear zone for strike response." "That's an order." She ignored it. Malik tilted his head slightly, a shadow of a smile. "We're going to pay for this." "If I don't pay, they will," she said, tilting the Apache downward. "And I won't watch them die." The Apache dropped fast, blades cutting a storm through the air. She lined up the cannon on the south ridge, where insurgents were, gathering behind rocks with launchers. "Targets locked," Malik called. She didn't hesitate. The cannon thundered, tearing through the ridge, sending men scattering like sand in a storm. The path east cracked open again for now, but the price was mounting. Warning lights flared red across her console. Rear stabilizers compromised, Malik said. Another direct hit, and we lose tail control. We're still flying, she answered. He exhaled. You always say that. And we always are. Her eyes scanned the valley again, searching for the next movement. It came fast. Truck inbound, north slope, technical, heavy gun. Malik's voice tightened. No missiles left on this vector. She narrowed her eyes. Cannons enough. The truck barreled down the slope, its gunner standing tall. The heavy weapon already opening fire. Bullets cut arcs through the air, slamming into stone, ricocheting dangerously close to the SEAL's line of retreat. Reena dipped low, pulling the Apache into a steep dive. The cannon spat, stitching rounds into the dirt, then into the truck itself. The front axle snapped. The vehicle flipped sideways, rolling down the slope before exploding in a bloom of fire. The ground shook with the impact. The SEALs didn't cheer this time. They just moved faster, their survival bound to the machine above. But Torres's eyes caught something else. Thermal lit up with a new wave. Dozens of signatures moving from the far slope. Too many to count. Too fast to stop. Malik saw it too. His voice was quiet now. That's not a patrol. That's a battalion. Her throat tightened. The ambush wasn't just an ambush. It was a slaughterhouse. Someone had fed their coordinates to the enemy, down to the minute. Someone wanted them all buried here. Her hand tightened on the cyclic. Not tonight. She pulled the Apache up hard, climbing above the entire valley. For 2 long seconds, she hovered at the peak of her ascent. The battlefield spread below her like a board game of fire and blood. Then she dove. The helicopter plunged faster than gravity should allow, rotors screaming as the nose leveled toward the enemy flank. The cannon unleashed a torrent of fire, shredding the rocks, tearing men apart before they could even aim their launches. Malik swore under his breath, the G-forces slamming them into their seats. On the ground, Briggs froze for half a second, staring at the bird's descent. She's not covering. U.S., he muttered. She's carving us a way out. Dust and fire rained over the valley. The SEALs seized the opening, moving east in a desperate push. But the enemy wasn't finished. An RPG streaked out of the smoke, slamming into the Apache's tail. The bird lurched violently, alarm screaming across the cockpit. Tail stabilizer gone. Malik shouted, We're losing balance. Reena fought the controls, her hands steady despite the chaos. Still flying. The helicopter bucked, tilted, then steadied under her grip. She banked hard, drawing fire away from the SEALs as they climbed the slope. Bullets traced the sky, hammering against the Apache's battered frame. The console flashed red again. Fuel at 15%. Malik warned. Plenty, she said. For what? To hold the sky 11 minutes longer on the ground. The SEALs reached a shallow basin, not a perfect landing zone, but flat enough for a Black Hawk. They dragged the CIA asset into cover, their weapons sweeping every angle as Roar called. Into his mic, Command, Bravo team requesting immediate evac. Coordinates uploaded. We need a bird now. Black Hawk inbound, Command replied. ETA, 10 minutes. 10 minutes, a lifetime. The SEALs exchanged looks, their eyes grim. They wouldn't last without cover. Above them, the Apache circled, its rotors coughing smoke, its ammunition nearly dry. Reena's presence was all that kept the enemy hesitating. Her shadow stretched across the basin like a shield. They've got 10 minutes, she said quietly. Malik looked at her, his eyes unreadable. And we've got 5? She exhaled, steady. Then we'll burn those 5, keeping them alive. The enemy surged again, pouring down the slope, dozens at a time. Fighters scrambled with launchers, rifles, even technicals roaring into view. The SEALs on the ground tightened their perimeter, rifles barking into the night. But all of them, Every single man looked up, because the Apache was still there, still. Bleeding smoke, still dented, scarred, cracked, but still hovering, still defiant, still owning the sky. What did it feel like to fight on fumes, when the machine beneath you was bleeding as badly as the men on the ground? The cockpit shook with every turn. Warning lights blinked across the panels. An angry chorus of alarms, screaming that the bird should already be falling from the sky. Reena Torres didn't hear them, or maybe she refused to. She only heard the steady beat of her own breath, the quiet rhythm that had carried her through countless missions. Fuel at 10%. Malik said, voice clipped, controlled. We're redlining. We're not done, she replied. Outside, the valley was a furnace of chaos. Dozens of fighters poured down the slopes, their shouts echoing in the night. RPG trails arced like burning comets, one exploding close enough to scorch the Apache's underside. Bullets stitched across the air, pinging against the helicopter's frame. The SEALs were huddled in the shallow basin below, the CIA asset barely conscious between them. Their rifles spat back in short, controlled bursts, but it was a losing fight. Each minute stretched longer, heavier. They had 8 left until the Black Hawk arrived. Reena dipped the Apache. Low, so low the wash from her rotors turned a storm of dust and rocks across the slope. Enemy fighters stumbled, blinded, covering their faces. She pressed the trigger, unleashing the last of her cannon rounds. The ridge exploded, men tumbling like broken shadows into the darkness. Cannon's dry, Malik reported. Her jaw tightened. Then we use what's left. What's left is gravity. She banked sharply, pulling the bird into a wide circle above the basin. To the enemy below, the Apache still looked lethal, its silhouette cutting across the sky like a vengeful spirit. They couldn't know she was nearly out of everything. The illusion was her weapon now, but illusions only lasted so long. Movement on the far ridge caught her eye. A technical, its headlights off, but its engine heat blazing on thermal. It was racing to cut off the Black Hawk's approach path. Its mounted, .50 cal swung toward the basin, the gunner bracing himself. No ammo, Malik said grimly. Her lips pressed tight. Then we get close. She shoved a cyclic forward, sending the Apache into a dive. The technical opened fire, tracer rounds tearing through the night. Sparks erupted as bullets kissed the Apache's skin, but she didn't flinch. She leveled at the last second, rotor screaming just feet above the truck. The downdraft struck like a hammer. The vehicle swerved, its gunner thrown off balance. The truck fishtailed sideways, slamming into a boulder. A metallic scream followed as it flipped, bursting into flame. The SEALs below watched in disbelief. Briggs muttered under his breath. She just turned the bird into a weapon. But Reena didn't celebrate. Her eyes were already scanning the next threat. Fuel at 5%, Malik warned. We've got minutes, plenty, she said, though her voice carried the weight of knowing it wasn't true. On the ground, Rue's voice cut through the comms. Black Hawk inbound, 6 minutes out. We just have to hold. Hold. It was a simple word, but it carried more than any of them wanted to admit. Holding meant standing in the storm until there was nothing left to stand with. Holding meant waiting while the world tried to crush you. Above them, Reena hovered, her Apache coughing black smoke, its tail trembling with every rotation. She thought of command's order, of the voice telling her to disengage, to leave them to fate and wait for the airstrike. She thought of what Briggs had said in the briefing, that he didn't trust pilots who didn't follow rules. And she wondered if he finally understood why, because the rules weren't written for nights like this. The enemy surged again, a wave of bodies charging down the slope. Shouts rose in the air, rifles blazing, launchers aimed. The SEALs met them with fire, their rifles cracking rhythmically, precise, but outnumbered 10-1. Reena pushed the Apache forward, not to fire. She had nothing left but to intimidate. She swept low, rotors kicking a wall of dust into the attackers. Fighters stumbled, some firing wildly, others breaking, but they kept coming. Malik's voice broke through the haze. "Reena, if we take another hit, she won't hold together." Her eyes narrowed. "Then we don't let them hit," the Apache roared across the slope again. Bluff and presence, her only weapons left. Dust rose like a curtain, obscuring the SEALs just long enough to shift their line. The comms crackled. Black Hawk inbound 4 minutes. 4 minutes. She circled again, her breath steady, her eyes burning with focus. The Apache's frame groaned, its rotors whining. With every turn, she felt it beneath her hands, the machine begging to give out. "You good?" Malik asked quietly. She didn't answer right away. She thought of the silence that always followed her into rooms, the way eyes shifted when she entered, the way doubt clung to her like shadow. She thought of every mission she had flown, each one carrying the weight of men who never came back. Finally, she said softly, "I'll be good when they're out." Her words hung heavy, more prayer than promise. Another wave surged from the south ridge, dozens of fighters firing as they ran. Desperation in their shouts, the SEALs braced, rifles cracking faster now. Their perimeter shrinking, Briggs leaned over the wounded asset, firing single shots between breaths. Sweat streaked his face, dust caking into his wounds. But he didn't stop. Above, Reena tilted the Apache nose first. She couldn't fire. She couldn't strike, but she could descend. The bird dropped low, almost scraping the earth, blades slicing the air with a deafening roar. Dust swallowed the slope, blinding the attackers. Some stumbled back. Others dropped their weapons. There, aim shattered by fear, Malik gripped the dash, steadying himself. "You're flying her like she's already dead." Her eyes stayed locked ahead. "Because she will be, but not yet." The radio crackled again. "Black Hawk on approach. 2 minutes." The basin erupted with noise as the evac bird skimmed the ridge, dropping fast into the shallow clearing. Its rotors churned a new storm of dust. Its side doors flung open. "Go, go, go." Roar shouted, hauling the CI asset to his feet. The SEALs scrambled, dragging the wounded, covering every angle as they rushed toward the bird. Bullets chased them, snapping against stone, kicking dirt at their boots. Reena angled her Apache between them and the slope, her shadow stretching across their retreat. She dropped again, almost skimming the ground, daring the enemy to fire. One insurgent did, raising an RPG, locking on. Malik saw it first. "Back ridge. Launcher incoming." "No time," Reena said. She tilted the Apache nose first, driving straight at the gunner. For a heartbeat, the man froze, shadow swallowing him. Then he broke, dropping the launcher as he scrambled into the rocks. The SEALs piled into the Black Hawk, shoving the asset inside, their rifles barking through the open doors. The evac pilot didn't hesitate. "We're hot. Lifting now." The Black Hawk surged upward, bullets peppering its fuselage as it climbed. Reena's console screamed with alarms. The Apache was dying beneath her, every gauge red, fuel almost gone. Malik's voice was tight. "We've got maybe 30 seconds of air left. That's it." She exhaled slowly. "Then we'll burn it between them and the enemy." She nosed the Apache forward, rotors screaming, black smoke trailing like a wounded beast. She placed herself directly between the Black Hawk and the charging fighters, her silhouette a shield even without ammunition. For the men on the ground, it looked like madness. For her, it was the only choice left. The Black Hawk climbed higher, clearing the ridge. Enemy fire chased it, bullets sparking against stone. But the distance grew with every second. The Apache hovered lower, shaking violently, its tail threatening to snap. Malik's hands gripped the console, sweat streaking his temple. "Reena, she's done." Her lips pressed into a line. "So am I." She tilted the nose one last time, rotors cutting deep into the air, shadow covering the slope. The fighters hesitated, uncertain, their fear outweighing their fury. And in that hesitation, the Black Hawk vanished into the night, The Apache shuddered once more, alarms wailing then. Dropped toward the earth. The impact came hard. Skids slamming rock. Tail boom crumpling, sparks spitting into the dark. The rotors spun once more, groaned, then died into silence. Dust settled. Reena's breath came heavy, shallow. She glanced at Malik. "You good?" He gave a slow nod. "Still here." She unbuckled, boots hitting dirt. She turned once, her eyes lingering on the broken machine, smoke curling from its vents like the last breath of a dying animal. She placed a hand on its side, her voice quiet. "Steady. You saved them." Then she let go, above the basin. The Blackhawk circled back, ropes dropping into the dust. Seals slid fast, rifles ready. Briggs landed first, scanning the slope before locking eyes with her. "You're coming with us," he said firmly. She shook her head. "Not if it costs you the bird." Too late. Ruhr's voice came from above. "We don't leave ghosts behind." Malik grabbed the rope first, hauling himself upward. Reena hesitated, her hand still brushing the Apache's scorched frame. Then she turned, grabbed the rope, and rose into the storm of dust. Gunfire cracked from the cliffs as fighters surged again. But the Blackhawk lifted, pulling free. Bullets tore into its fuselage. Sparks flying, men shouting. Reena pulled herself into the cabin. Collapsing against the wall, Briggs handed her a canteen. She didn't drink. She just stared out the open door, watching the wrecked Apache shrink beneath them. Silent, broken, but not defeated. It had done its duty, and so had she. Why was the silence heavier than the battle itself? The Blackhawk slid into Bram Airfield just as dawn stretched across the horizon, its pale light washing the desert in muted shades of golden ash. The rotors thundered, kicking up dust clouds that rolled across the tarmac. Swallowing the scars of the night, Captain Reena Torres stepped off last. Her left boot was torn, her flight suit streaked with dirt and blood, her body trembling from fatigue, though she refused to show it. Behind her, the SEALs carried the unconscious CIA asset on a stretcher, medics rushing forward to take him. His life was still a fragile thread, but it hadn't snapped. Every pair of eyes on the runway followed her. No words, no applause, just the weight of silent recognition. Briggs glanced at her once as he passed. The fresh stitches across his cheek caught the rising sun, but his expression was unreadable. Still, something had shifted. The doubt in his eyes was gone, but recognition was not forgiveness, and it was not protection. Inside the briefing room, the air was colder than the desert outside. 3 senior officers stood at the long table. A CIA representative lingered at the edge, adjusting his glasses, his face unreadable. An internal investigator, stiff and severe, clutched a thick folder. Under his arm, Torres entered with Malik at her side. Neither spoke, neither had to. The lead officer began without preamble. "Captain Torres, you disobeyed a direct stand-down order from Central Command." "Yes, sir," she said evenly. "Your Apache was already compromised, fuel critical, structural damage across the tail. You had no air-to-air cover, and yet you continued offensive maneuvers against protocol." She stood straight, shoulders squared. "Because the SEALs were going to die, sir." The room went still. The CIA rep leaned forward. "You saved one of our key field assets. That man carried data on an arms pipeline tied to insurgent networks. If he had died in that ambush, we would have lost months of work." The investigator's voice cut sharp. "You also abandoned your airframe mid-extraction to engage hostiles with no ground support." "That's not air support, that's rogue action." Torres's jaw tightened. "I delayed them long enough for the Blackhawk to reach safe airspace. That was the mission." "No," the investigator snapped. "The mission was air support, not ground engagement, not improvisation." Malik finally leaned forward, his voice calm but edged. "She didn't go rogue. She bought time. Time command couldn't provide. They were 20 minutes late." Silence stretched, heavier now than bullets. Finally, The senior officer raised a hand. Enough. She may have broken the book, but she saved the chapter. Discipline recommendations will be handled later. For now, Captain Torres, you're grounded pending review. Hand over your flight keys. The words struck like a round. To the chest, her breath caught, though she didn't let it show. My flight keys? The officer nodded. Standard until the board convenes. 3 days from now. Malik shifted beside her, but she lifted a hand to stop him. Her face was unreadable. Understood, sir. She reached into her pocket, pulled out the heavy metal keys, and placed them on the table. The sound echoed through the room, metallic and final. She turned without another word and walked out. Outside, the base buzzed with routine. Humvees rolled across the lot. Choppers lifted for patrols. Mechanics shouted over the clatter of tools. The world moved on as if nothing had happened. But inside her chest, silence burned hotter than any desert sun. Malik caught up with her outside the barracks. You all right? She shrugged. I did what I had to do. That's all. He nodded slowly, then pulled a folded piece of paper from his pocket. This came while we were being chewed out. From the SEAL commander. She opened it. The handwriting was sharp, unadorned. Your actions saved every life on the ground that night. I've seen good pilots, brave ones, foolish ones. You weren't any of those. You were necessary. Whatever command decides. We know who cleared that valley. Simplify R. She blinked once. Jaw tight, she folded the note carefully, sliding it into her breast pocket as though it were heavier than steel. That night, the pilot's bar was nearly empty. 2 air crews lingered. A radio tech leaned against the counter, and an exhausted cook flipped burgers in the back. Torres sat alone in the corner booth, boots propped on the opposite chair, nursing a black coffee that had long since gone cold. The weight of silence pressed harder here. No cockpit to command, no machine at her fingertips. Just stillness and the gnawing thought of what she'd lost. The door swung open. Sergeant Briggs entered, fresh stitches across his cheek, his uniform dusty and torn. He spotted her immediately and walked straight over. You jumped out of a bird with nothing but a sidearm and smoke, he said flatly. She nodded. I've made worse decisions. He sat across from her, resting one hand on the table. His eyes were steady now, not skeptical. You didn't just save us. You gave us back something we don't get often. She raised a brow. What's that? Hope. The word hung heavy. She looked away, shaking her head. Doesn't count for much in a boardroom. A faint smile tugged at his mouth. That's because you don't know what's coming. Before she could ask, the door opened again. Commander Rohr stepped in, uniform dusty, jaw set. Behind him came the base CO and a man in civilian clothes. Pentagon. They came straight to her. The CO didn't waste time. Captain Torres, your actions during the Garmac ambush have been reviewed. Her jaw tightened. She braced for the blow. The Pentagon man stepped forward. We're not just here to confirm your grounding. She exhaled slowly. Then what? He set a file down on the table. We're here to offer you command. The bar went silent. Even the cook stopped moving. Torres blinked once. Say again. We're forming a new rapid response gunship unit. No politics, no red tape. You'll have final authority on missions. We need someone who doesn't follow rules. Someone who knows when rules get people killed. She stared at him. And if I say no? Rohr spoke quietly. Then we'll know you finally lost that fire. And I don't believe that for a second. Her eyes flicked to Malik. Standing nearby, he gave the smallest nod. Briggs raised his coffee cup in silent agreement. She stood slowly. Where's the paperwork? The CO smiled faintly. Thought you'd never ask. 2 months later, the desert night shimmered under the rotors of a new black-painted Apache AH-64E. The machine crouched in the shadows of the hangar, sleek and lethal, upgraded with extended fuel tanks, the doubled weapon systems, and custom retrofits built for speed and precision. Painted discreetly below the cockpit window was its name, Revenant 1. Reena stood at its nose, helmet tucked under her arm. The same fire burned in her chest, but now it was sharpened into something else. Authority. The bird wasn't just metal, it was a message. Inside the hangar, her new handpicked crew reviewed. The night's out, Malik, still her co-pilot, Redman, a munitions specialist pulled from the 160th Valdez, an air traffic savant with a knack for radar manipulation. They were hers now, and the sky was still hers to own. What did it mean to be trusted with fire when the same fire could burn you alive? The desert at night stretched endless, painted in ash and silver beneath a low moon. Revenant 1 thundered across it, blades cutting invisible scars into the air. Inside the cockpit, Captain Reena Torres gripped the cyclic with practiced calm. Malik sat beside her, scanning instruments. Behind them, Redman checked munitions while Valdez traced radar signatures with his fingertips like a man reading Braille. This wasn't the same Apache she had nearly died in. This one was faster, meaner, built to endure hell and claw its way back. But machines were only as honest as the people who sent them into battle. And Torres had already learned not every enemy carried a rifle. "Contact in 90 seconds, Valdez said, his voice low, precise. Reena's visor lit with the shape of the compound ahead. An abandoned school, its concrete walls fractured from years of shelling. Trucks clustered around it like carrion birds. Guards smoked in the courtyard, laughing, oblivious to the storm streaking toward them. Malik adjusted sensors. Thermal shows 2 on the roof, 6 in the yard, 2 inside near the hostage. Reena's voice dropped. "No margin for error," she breathed once, steady. "Arming lasers." The first hellfire streaked into the night, a single line of fire that ripped into the courtyard, scattering men like ants. The second collapsed a watchtower in a thunderclap. Of dust and stone, chaos swallowed the compound as guards scrambled for weapons. Firing wildly into the dark, Reena pulled the Apache low, circling tight. Her visor tracked heat blooms as fighters scattered. Malik called them out in quick rhythm. 3 near the vehicles, 2 moving north wall, 1 dragging the hostage deeper. "Inside. Copy," she murmured. Tilting into a dive, the chain gun roared, chewing through the ground, cutting paths that forced the enemy back. But the mission was already shifting. Redman's voice cut through. "Khaled's personal vehicle is moving, rear exit, black SUV. Fast." Valdez confirmed, tapping his screen. "Warm body in the back seat. Likely target. Target locked." Malik said, "Fire?" "Fire," Reena answered. The missile streaked, perfect, inevitable, until the air itself bent. A flash, a burst of white light. The hellfire veered midder, carving into the sand 50 yards short. "What the—" Malik cursed. "ECM." Valdez growled. "They've got signal jammers. High grade." Reena's throat tightened. Warlords weren't supposed to have gear like that. Not here. Not now. She pulled the bird low, skimming the canyon. Switched to gun, manual override. The Apache roared, spitting fire across the desert. Sparks flew as rounds punched into the SUV's rear bumper, glass shattering. But the driver swerved, weaving through the narrow track. Then the radio came alive, static first. Then a voice, clear, mocking, familiar, still alive. "Apache?" The man said in accented English. "I owe you 4 graves. Come earn yours." Reena's heart froze cold. Her visor narrowed on the SUV as his voice slithered through the open channel. Malik's hand hovered over the frequency. "He's transmitting." "Wide? We cut him?" Reena's voice was ice. "No. Let him talk. He just signed his death warrant." The SUV veered onto a mountain road, too narrow for missiles, too dangerous for blind fire. Dust plumed from its tires as it weaved between rock walls. "Set me." "Up for slope descent," she ordered. Malik hesitated. "That's manual terrain lock, risky." "Do it." He flipped the switches. 30 seconds before we're exposed. Reena tilted the Apache into the curve of the canyon, hugging the Stone so close the rotor scraped dust from its face. The SUV swerved on loose gravel. A moment of imbalance. That was all she needed. The chain gun unleashed, rounds stitching into the hood. Metal shrieked. The vehicle flipped, crashing sideways into the canyon wall. Flames erupted, licking at the night. Silence followed. No taunts, no transmissions, just fire. Heat signatures? She asked quietly. Malik scanned. Multiple inside, none moving. Her eyes lingered on the wreckage. Her voice was a whisper. One warlord down. Before the silence could settle, another voice crackled across the net. Revenant 1, this is Raven Team. Hostage secure. Compound cleared. Requesting evac window. Reena exhaled. Steady. Raven Team, airspace is clear. You're good to go. The Apache rose. Circling above the burning wreck. Mission complete. At least on the surface. But inside her chest, unease coiled tighter. Because Kala Dra had fought like a man who wasn't just armed, but informed and worse. Someone had given him tools he should never have touched. 3 weeks later, the polished oak table of a Pentagon briefing room reflected her every move. Generals, CIA, NSA. Nameless suits. They all watched as she finished her after-action report. General Carnes, head of Joint Special Operations, leaned forward. You violated your perimeter. You risked civilian casualties. You commandeered a manual descent against protocol. But you succeeded. Reena's face was unreadable. I followed the threat, neutralized it, saved the hostage. Carnes's eyes narrowed. That Apache of yours, you modified it off book. She didn't flinch. I made her lethal. That's what she was meant to be. Dismissed. The word was sharp, final. She left the room like she'd left battlefields, straight-backed. Unreadable. Malik was waiting in the hall, arms crossed. You in trouble? No more than usual. They don't like it when war turns personal. They're jealous, he said. You turned a ghost into a legend. Her phone buzzed. A single message from Redman. We have a problem in the hangar drone footage. Flickered across a monitor. Routine sweep from NSA. Redman said, his jaw tight. Except someone spliced it before it hit CENTCOM. On screen, her Apache minutes before the convoy strike, but wrong. The footage had been altered. Her targeting system fired prematurely. Explosions out of sync. A civilian body marked in red near the wreckage. Her breath caught. That's fake. I never targeted that building. Redman nodded. Someone wants it to look like you did. Someone high up. They knew the feed routes. Valdez's voice cut sharp. Trace says it was routed through a Langley server. CI, a shell company. Reena stared at the screen, her chest hollowed. They're not just smearing me, she said. They're scrubbing something bigger. How do you fight a war when the enemy wears your own flag? The hangar was quiet that night. Revenant 1 sat crouched in shadow, rotor still, the faint glint of moonlight tracing across its skin. It should have felt like sanctuary. Instead, it felt like a cage. Captain Reena Torres stood at the nose of the Apache, her hand resting against the cold metal. Malik's voice echoed softly behind her. They doctored the footage. They'll bury you if you let them. She didn't move, didn't answer. Her reflection stared back at her in the tinted cockpit. Glass. Finally, she whispered, Then I won't let them. The next day, a folder slid across a diner table in D.C. The man across from her was tired. His hair gray, his suit cheap but pressed. Senator Hayes. He leaned close. His voice hushed over the clink of coffee cups and the hum of morning chatter. You've stirred a hornet's nest, he said. CIA contractors tied to Khalid's cell. Funding traced through shell companies, protected by men in the city. They're not trying to smear you, Captain. They're trying to erase you. Her jaw tightened. Then bring it to light. Hayes shook his head. Without testimony. I'm just a politician with paper. You flew the mission. You saw the jammer. You heard his voice. She leaned back. Silence. For a moment, the cafe noise seemed miles away. Testimony meant standing in front of the world. It meant lifting the quiet shield she had worn for years and exposing her life under fluorescent lights and cameras. She thought of the seals, of Briggs's stitched cheek, of the note tucked in her pocket. You were necessary. She closed her eyes once, opened them, and nodded. Set the date. 3 weeks later. Washington's marble corridors echoed with the rhythm of her boots. The Senate hearing chamber loomed like a cathedral. High ceilings, cameras perched like vultures, rows of reporters hungry for a headline. Reena walked in alone, no escort. No medals, just her uniform, sharp and unyielding. The chairman's voice carried through the chamber. Captain Torres, you've been called to testify regarding the events of Operation Revenant. She raised her right hand, took the oath, and sat. The microphone waited in front of her, black and unforgiving. The first senator spoke. Captain, records show your Apache deviated from orders, resulting in civilian deaths. Do you confirm this? Her eyes didn't waver. No, that footage was falsified. The room stirred. Cameras clicked. Pens scratched furiously. Do you have proof? Another senator pressed. She leaned forward. I have my crew. I have black box telemetry. I have drone metadata showing signal interference. And I have one simple question. The room stilled. Who gave College U.S.-grade electronic countermeasures? The chamber erupted in noise. Murmurs, gasps, whispered curses. The chairman slammed the gavel. Order. Reena's voice cut through the chaos, clear and calm. A warlord doesn't jam hellfires unless someone hands him the tools. That someone is in this city. That someone tried to bury me with lies so no one would ask why. Her words lingered. Like smoke, across the chamber, she saw him. A man in a tailored suit. A lapel pin faint under his jacket. His eyes were locked on her, not angry. Not rattled, but watchful, calculating. And in that gaze, she knew. She had struck too close. After hours of questioning, the session adjourned. The cameras shut off. The reporters swarmed the hall, shouting her name, their flashbulbs turning. The marble walls into lightning. She moved through them silently, eyes forward, jaw tight, outside. Malik was waiting in the shadow of a pillar. You just painted a target on your back. She gave a thin smile. It was already there. That night, her hotel room was too quiet. She sat on the edge of the bed, boots still on, staring at the city lights beyond the window. In her lap, the old folded note from Briggs. You were necessary. Necessary. But for how long? Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She answered. A voice, low and steady. You should stop, Captain. Walk away before this buries you. Her chest tightened. Who is this? The line went dead. She stared at the phone, her pulse steadying. Then she stood, crossing to the small desk where her helmet sat. She traced a finger across the scratches in its visor, each one earned in fire. Walking away wasn't in her blood. 2 days later, she met Hayes in a parking garage. His face was pale, sweat beading his temple. He held out a flash drive. Intercepted comes, he whispered. Langley contractors moving crates to the eastern corridor. Same jammer signatures as Garmick. There. Still supplying. She took the drive, sliding it into her pocket. Then we finish this. Careful, Torres. They'll come after you. She met his eyes, steady. They already have. Back at the hangar, Revenant 1 waited. Her crew stood. Around it, silent, expectant. Malik broke the silence. This isn't sanctioned. No, she said. It's survival. Redmond's mouth tightened. Then we fly. Valdez flicked the lights on. Revenant 1's systems came alive. Screens glowing, engines rumbling. Like a beast waking from slumber, Reena climbed into the cockpit, strapping in, her jaw set. Washington wanted her silent. The CIA wanted her erased. The warlords wanted her dead. But the sky still listened, and she still had a voice. How far would you go for truth? If the truth itself could kill you? The night air was heavy, electric. Revenant 1 crouched in the shadows of a desert strip, rotors idling low, the moon cutting sharp edges across its frame. Captain Reena Torres, strapped into the cockpit, her gloves tightening around the cyclic. Malik sat beside her, eyes hard, silent. Behind them, Redman checked the belts of ammunition. While Valdez tapped rhythmically across his radar screen, they weren't waiting for orders. There were none. This was beyond protocol, beyond sanction. Coordinates locked, Valdez said quietly. Eastern corridor. Old airfield turned depot. Crates inbound from Jordan. Manifest says construction equipment. Redman snorted. Construction equipment doesn't fry hellfires. Out of the air, Reena's jaw tightened. She pushed the throttle forward. Revenant 1 rose, slicing into the night. Hours later, the desert opened beneath them, endless and black. Then lights, flood lamps cutting sharp circles in the sand, rose. Of trucks lined in formation, forklifts grinding across cracked tarmac. At the center stood 3 shipping containers, taller than a man, shielded by armed contractors. Through her visor, Reena saw the glint of weapons, not rifles, something larger. Thermals confirm, Malik murmured. ECM arrays, same signature. As Garmick, her chest hollowed, this was it, the proof. The cancer rotting inside their own system. She keyed the comms, voice low. Revenant 1 engaging. The first hellfire streaked, carving into the truck's fireball. The second tore through the forklifts, scattering men like shadows. Chaos ignited. Gunfire ripped upward, tracers slashing against the night sky. Revenant 1 banked hard, chain gun roaring, tearing through the barricades. But the real prize wasn't fighting back. It was fleeing. A black SUV peeled away from the depot, headlights cutting across the sand. Inside, her thermal caught 2 signatures. One contractor, one in a suit. Langley, her voice was ice. Target vehicle breaking east. Malik's hands moved without hesitation. Locked. Fire. The missile streaked. Clean. Precise. The SUV erupted in a bloom of flame, swallowed whole. The depot was still alive, though. Men shouting, scrambling to protect the containers. Redman's voice was sharp. They're trying to torch the evidence. Reena dove, pulling the Apache so low the rotors churned sandstorms. The cannon shredded the first container, sparks and metal exploding outward. Inside, racks of jammers, fresh, unused. The second burst, spilling crates of rifles stamped with U.S. serials. Her throat tightened. Proof. Too much proof. The third container cracked open under the blast. And inside, not weapons, not jammers, but paper, folders, hard drives, the kind of evidence no one could deny. Valdez's voice broke the silence. They were keeping records, Redman swore. They thought they'd never be caught. Reena exhaled, steady, as if her heartbeat itself might shatter the moment. Now they are. Gunfire peppered the cockpit glass, shattering against the reinforced shield. Revenant 1 bucked, alarm shrieking. Malik's voice rose. Tail stabilizer hit. Still flying, she muttered. She swung the bird around, chain guns spitting fire until no muzzle flashed back. The depot burned. Containers cracked open like secrets too long buried. Pull out, Malik urged. Not yet. She keyed the comms. Revenant 1 broadcasting. Secure channel override. Static. Then, a connection. She didn't know who was listening. Command, Senate, the world. It didn't matter. This is Captain Reena Torres. Revenant unit, she said, voice unshaken. Coordinates transmitting. Depot compromised. Evidence recovered. This is proof of collusion. U.S. hardware and countermeasures supplied to insurgent cells. Repeat. Proof of collusion. Visual confirmation transmitting now. Valdez's hands flew across the console, streaming the footage from their onboard. Systems, crates, weapons, hard drives. Broadcast raw and uncut. Unaltered. For the first time, silence answered. No denials, no orders. Just silence. The kind that meant someone was listening. But the sky wasn't done testing her. Heat signature, inbound drone. Malik snapped. Predator, not ours. Her eyes narrowed. They're not just covering. Tracks. They're burning the whole field. The drone dove, missile streaking. Reena jerked the Apache into a climb, the explosion lighting the desert below like daylight. She grit her teeth. We can't outlast a drone swarm. Valdez's voice cracked. 3 more signatures inbound. ETA 90 seconds. Redmond's hand clamped her shoulder. We got the proof. That's the mission. Her eyes stayed on the flames below. And the cost? Malik leaned closer, his voice steady. We can't tell the truth if we don't live to carry it. The second missile streaked. Too close. The explosion rattled through Revenant 1. Alarms screaming red across the console. Engine 1 compromised? Malik barked. She pulled hard, coaxing the bird higher. Faster. Through the smoke? The third missile streaked. Countermeasures, she hissed. Flares spit fire into the night. The missile veered, detonating harmlessly. Behind them, but the sky lit again with new signatures. Drones multiplying. No end. And in that moment, Reena knew this wasn't a fight to win. It was a message to deliver. She leveled the Apache, voice calm. Valdez, confirmed transmission locked? Locked, he whispered. It's out there now. Everyone sees it. She closed her eyes once, opened them. Then we did it. The fourth missile screamed in. Too fast. Too close. Impact. The world split in fire and steel. Revenant 1 tumbled. Torn sky from Earth, black smoke carving scars across the desert. When the flames cleared, twisted wreckage littered the sand. No movement, no sound, just silence. But the transmission had already spread. Newsrooms erupted. Senate halls shook. The world saw what she had seen. Proof undeniable. The cancer could no longer hide. 2 weeks later, under marble pillars and bitter. Politics. Senator Hayes spoke softly to a crowded press line. Captain Reena Torres gave her life not in combat, but in truth. She stood when silence was safer. She exposed when secrecy was stronger. She carried a burden no one else dared to lift. And because of her, we see clearly now, the corruption is ours to face. At the base, the SEALs gathered at dawn. Briggs stood at the airstrip, the stitched scar on his cheek catching the first. White, he set down a small plaque at the hangar door. Revenant 1. She owned the sky. Even when it burned her, Malik survived. Redman 2. Valdez walked with a limp. They never spoke of the crash, not in detail, but they kept flying. They kept fighting, because silence had been broken. And sometimes that was enough. The desert winds carried the last of the smoke away. In the shifting sands, a truth remained, not carved in stone, not written in files, but carried in the choices of one pilot who refused to obey silence. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts.